Well, a quick recap of where we've come from the beginning of Leviticus, where no one could enter the glory of the Lord, to this liturgy of grace, allowing Israel to come and meet with the Lord and be in his presence. And today gives us a picture image to hold on to. I think that the Israelites would have grabbed onto, is at the heart of their worship, of their temple worship, this image of what it means to be in relationship with God and standing day in and day out in his presence. Leviticus 24, 1-9. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the people of Israel to bring you pure oil from beaten olives for the lamp, that a light may be kept burning regularly. Outside the veil of the testimony in the tent of meeting, Aaron shall arrange it from evening to morning before the Lord regularly. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. He shall arrange the lamps on the lampstand of pure gold before the Lord regularly. You shall take fine flour and bake 12 loaves from it. 2/10 of an ephah shall be in each loaf. And you shall set them in 2 piles, 6 in a pile, on the table of pure gold before the Lord. And you shall put pure frankincense on each pile, that it may go with the bread as a memorial portion, as a food offering to the Lord. Every Sabbath day Aaron shall arrange it before the Lord regularly. It is from the people of Israel as a covenant forever. And it shall be for Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat it in a holy place, since it is for him a most holy portion out of the Lord's food offerings, a perpetual due." So we're landing here in chapter 24 because I think it really rounds out the conversation so far about what exactly is Leviticus about. And we've been calling it throughout this series a liturgy of grace. This was not a works-based religion. They were not earning their place with God. They were not even explicitly getting rid of their own sins by their own sacrifice and work. The whole thing was a liturgy is the form of our worship, and God offering this liturgy of grace to Israel to say, I know that you're sinful, I know that you're broken, I know that you can never add up, but I still want a relationship with you. And it was founded in grace. So the whole thing is, how do we cover over our inadequacy and our sin so that we can still have a relationship with our Creator? And here we get this picture image that I think would have resonated with Israel in a really powerful way. So really quick, you can look this up online and find much better images, but I'm going to just give a quick little download of what was in the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, later becoming the temple itself. So at the very heart was a perfect square of space that they called the most holy place. And in there was where the actual Ark of the Covenant was, the mercy seat. That's where God's presence dwelt. And that was the place where only once a year, on the Day of Atonement, which we studied last week, the high priest could enter one time a year. So one time a year, the high priest could go into the most holy place. The tent of meeting, though, was bigger than that. That was at the back. There was this other space here that the priests could go into regularly. And this is where they did their day in and day out ministry of mediation with Israel. Outside of the actual tent was where the altar would have been, and this is where they would actually have made the sacrifices. Right? There's other things that happened as well. Inside this place, they called this the holy place. So only the priests could enter here, and this is where they offer incense, which is representing the prayers of the people. There was also what we're seeing described here. And so inside the holy place was a golden table, and on that golden table was the 7 lampstands of God. So the menorah, right? And the priest's role was to make sure that the lamps were always burning. And there was a reason for that. And so these lamps were burning regularly, and they were situated in such a way so that the light of the lamp would shine onto this table. And on this table was set these 12 loaves, baked regularly and replenished by the priests. As they were removed from the table, they would become the share of Aaron and the priests, so they would be able to eat these loaves as well as part of the animal sacrifices. So they had a food allotment. But the liturgy here was that the 12 loaves were basking in the presence of this light. So what is the image going on here? This is a really important image to kind of understand, to see the liturgy of grace on display. The light of the menorah was the presence of God. Later on in, say, like Isaiah 11, I believe, in other places in the prophets, the Spirit of God is described in a 7-fold way. So this, or in the book of Revelation, the seer John actually takes it all the way and just describes the Spirit of God as the 7 spirits of God. But there's this image of, so we have God, and the Spirit of God is represented in this 7-fold way, and these 7 lamps represent the 7-fold presence of the Lord. And it shines on the 12 loaves. And what are the 12 loaves? Well, that would be a stand-in for Israel, right? So Israel themselves are represented inside the holy place as these 12 loaves that sit before the light and presence of God day in and day out. And so it's the people. If you're just a regular commoner coming to worship the Lord at the temple, you know that I can come here, I can offer my sacrifices, but only the high priest, the consecrated priest, could enter the holy place. But I know that I'm represented there. Actually, the high priest is going in there as a mediator. He's offering the prayers, my prayers to God in the incense, but I'm there in the presence of the loaves. And so day in and day out, I get a seat before the Lord. Actually, the whole temple ceremony, the whole Liturgy of Grace is in one way or another giving me access to God. So the sacrifices are atoning for my sins, and I have this kind of a mediator standing before God's presence even though I can't be there physically. The loaves themselves become a symbol of me sitting before the Lord day in and day out. And so this picture that's kept up every single day, the priests, one of their main roles is to keep the lamps burning and to replace these loaves, make sure that they're fresh every single day, so that Israel has this image of themselves sitting before the presence of the Lord. Really quick, just for later diving in, this story, one, you can find it in many other places throughout the Bible, but 2 that really stand out for me was in 1 Samuel 21. This is this famous story of David on the run, and he goes into the temple and is offered the bread of the presence to eat. And so even comparing that with this, and what was it about David, the future king, who was able to actually take the bread of the presence, and it was this bread here that he takes there. Another really interesting connection would be Revelation, way at the end of the Bible, chapters 1 and 2 in particular. Jesus calls on this image of the lampstands and the burning lamps and kind of conflates this image from the temple into the church. And he says the church is the lampstand and the spirits of God are the lamp, are the flames that are burning there. And so kind of studying that in relationship to this original Liturgy of Grace is really interesting as well. Well, take that image with you this week. What would it mean for you to resonate with the idea that we as God's people are supposed to be like these freshly baked loaves placed in the presence and the light of God day in and day out? And what it means to worship God in community, this Liturgy of Grace, is to be constantly in His presence, basking in His light. Where do you need that encouragement this week? Where do you need to reflect on that and apply that in just how you see the world?